The Chinese electric vehicle auto industry, once non-existent, is now a dominant force. While BYD is leading the pack, there are many other Chinese automakers that are ready to go global. The US will likely impose huge tariffs to protect the US automakers, but there's a loophole. BYD, Chery, and SAIC are looking to build factories in Mexico, and their cars could be in the US within the next 6 years. Tesla is also encouraging Chinese suppliers to set up shop near Giga Mexico. So what's going to happen? We've got Larry Goldberg here with us. He's a multi-entrepreneur. He's a regular on the show. Thank you so much, Larry.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me as always. This is a topic that you've been following closely. So I wanted to ask you more about what's going to happen when China decides, they're trying to go global. It's a concern for Elon, saying that we need to have tariffs for these guys to protect the US automakers. Or, you can, maybe I interpreted that differently. Let's take a look here. So this is an article written, Teslarati says Tesla hopes to replicate Giga Shanghai lines in Mexico, but US isn't thrilled. So of course, Giga Shanghai is very, very successful. It's the most successful factory for Tesla. And it's, they've got this thing just humming like crazy. And they've got the Chinese auto suppliers. And so what did they do in Mexico? How are they going to do that? Well, Tesla is inviting the Chinese suppliers to set up shop near that area. It's called the Tesla's district. But the US officials are not going to be thrilled about this because they don't want the Chinese companies to supply Tesla and its new factory, which will produce the next gen platform. And this is the report, right? Elon invited the Chinese suppliers to Mexico, and they want to do that. And so this is things I just mentioned now. But this is the part that's interesting is, right here, right? Sorry, guys. It's right around here. So this is BYD, Chery, and SAIC are all the Chinese brands are already looking to build plants and manufacture EVs in Mexico. Their cars could be in the US within the next 6 years. What you're thinking about all this?
Firstly, whenever you say that, whenever you read in the press that the Chinese are expected to do it within 6 years, divide that by 2.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but we earlier this month we did a spaces on Chinese manufacturers with somebody who had a very deep insight into it, and they pointed to the sort of back door to the American market of Mexico and the back door to the European market of Hungary. And the back door means that, manufacturers can set up in a particular country or a particular regime, economic regime, and then sell cars into the areas that, theoretically there are tariffs around. So Mexico as a backdoor is an excellent backdoor because we have this trade agreement with Mexico, which was originally NAFTA, and then was renegotiated rather excellently. One of the few really good things that the Trump administration did, and the result was a really good relationship between America and Mexico in terms of manufacturing, and the car industry has just blossomed in Mexico. There isn't a car manufacturer that doesn't have some Mexican installations and operations. However, it's one thing to say Mexico is a backdoor. It's another thing to let's consider the issues. So one of the things that distinguishes Chinese manufacturing is Chinese productivity. And productivity doesn't just talk about methods and automation, it also talks about labor. And the question is, will we see Mexican labor working with the same level of productivity as Chinese labor? I don't really see why a plant with a Chinese flag in front of it in Mexico should be any more productive than a plant with, a Tesla flag on front of it. It's unclear to me. Why would they be would they be that much more productive because their methods of manufacturing? Well, the method of manufacturing in China, in the Shanghai Tesla plant, is going to be no different to that in the Mexican plant. So just because the ownership is in China, and remember that they still can't use manufactured parts from China. The old backdoor was you set up a manufacturing plant, you manufacture the thing in China, you bring it and you just do the last and final assembly in the US. Well, that's not gonna hack it, because to get a stamp of US or NAFTA manufacturing, or I don't know what the latest regime is called. It's not NAFTA, it's NAAF or something. But in order to get that stamp of approval, you have to prove the percentage of parts that come into the vehicle are made in North America and Mexico. So I don't understand why people are so concerned about this. The ownership is one thing, the method of manufacturing another thing, and the origin of the components are the third thing. And it's the origin of the components that I think, is the protection that we have here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I guess, yes. So they may not be cheaper, more efficient, like they can show that they're in Shanghai, but it still is a loophole for the Chinese manufacturers to land in Mexico, build factories there, have their suppliers build factories there, produce it, and then sell it into the US.
Right.
Let me share.
But remember, you're creating jobs in the NAFTA environment. The whole reason for protection is jobs,
job loss. Yeah.
Yeah, and balance of payments. So I don't understand, with the ownership changes to Chinese, why that actually has any real impact. Because after all that means is that the profits, which invariably is a tiny percentage of the total revenue, gets remitted back to China in dollars. So in a way, this is encouraging foreign direct investment. Now, foreign direct investment in Mexico is not as good as foreign direct investment in the US. And this is something over time which the US can control. So I think I would encourage it rather than discourage it. So let's think about silicon plants or chip plants in the United States.
We want them. Yeah.
Do we want ownership of those chip plants to be in US hands, or are we comfortable with them being in Taiwanese hands?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're in Taiwanese hands, then theoretically there's direct foreign investment. So foreign direct investment is supporting our balance of payments. It's a good thing in every way. So I think ownership is one thing. Origin of manufactured goods is a whole nother thing. And why is China setting up plants in Mexico? Well, the one reason is the tariffs, but there's another reason. China is running out of labor. Believe it or not, the Chinese the Chinese labor pool crested 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah, the Trump administration slapped up a bunch of tariffs, but the Chinese time had come. Chinese labor costs are rising very, very rapidly, even as their output is reducing. So the whole world where, China sort of concentrated all the manufacturing in China, China brought all the supply chain into China. That's going to reverse now. And what we're seeing is the beginning of the reversal. Yeah, there are political drivers. There's no doubt political drivers. But the political drivers are coming at the same time as the economic drivers. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I think we're going to see, the situation where the worm turns completely and, the rest of the world becomes a manufacturing workshop for Chinese companies.
Interesting. Good points. I hadn't thought of those things. So let me share a little bit more of the facts from this article and get you to react to it. So you brought up the Trump administration had the trade war in 2018 with China. What that apparently did was it pushed Chinese companies to snap up Mexican land for parts production. And so that's sort of what kicked it off. But like you said, they probably needed to do it regardless. They're doing it all around the world. And so it looks like here that in 2018, they had 1.28 million square feet of industrial park space in Mexico. By 2023, that jumped from 1.28 to 9.31. So it's already like significant growth there. Anyways, if they build the EVs in Mexico, they would still qualify for the 7,500 EV tax credit, uh, as long as the battery minerals or components are not
Outsourced.
sourced from China. Yeah. So that's what you were saying earlier. Like they can't do this thing anymore to just bring the thing there. They have to build it straight from Mexico. So, like you said, they're going to be using North American labor and costs, anyways. But it could lead to cheap EVs that are not necessarily built in the U.S. but are still able to qualify for the tax credit. So that's sort of what they were
But
talking
this
about
is,
there.
this is the internal contradiction in the article. How do they make cheap EVs in Mexico?
Oh, I see. Yeah, good point.
I mean, there's an
Well,
internal contradiction in the article, and there's an internal contradiction in this whole approach. If they're in Mexico, they have the level playing field with Ford and GM and Stellantis and Tesla, who are all building plants there. I mean, Ford manufacture several of their EVs right now in Mexico. You know, everybody admits to recognize that Tesla is the most US built vehicle of all vehicles on the market today, possibly the most US built vehicle in the last 30 years. But let's assume that 5 years time they're manufacturing cars in Mexico. Where is the advantage for a SAIC or a BYD in manufacturing in Mexico over Tesla? They have the same labor. They have to source all their product in North America. Where do they earn a significant advantage and deliver, quote, cheap EVs? Now, they may deliver designs that are smaller, lighter, less range than a Tesla or than a GM EV. Well, that's the choice of the market. That's a product choice. But I don't see the advantage, and I don't understand the cry of pain that's going up here.
yeah, it's what you just said, right? They're going to create the segmentation. The other thing that's so I would love everything you were just saying, right? That it's not a given that these Chinese manufacturers will be able to easily get across to the US or Europe because they have to replicate the suppliers. They have to use higher labor. They're not necessarily as productive, but they will have the smaller segments. Having said that, I'm going to show a video here. I mean, you also agree that the Chinese, the comment that Elon has made, right? That it's going to be Tesla number one, and the next 9 manufacturers are going to be the Chinese auto manufacturers. In order for that to happen, they have to go global. Because if they are just stuck in China, they're not enough scaled for them to actually be truly the top 10. Let me play a little bit of clips of what Elon has said over the years about what he thinks about China here.
The Chinese car companies are extremely competitive. By far, our toughest competition is in China. If you're out there who think like the top 10 car companies is going to be Tesla, followed by 9 Chinese car companies, I think they might not be wrong. China is super good at manufacturing, and the work ethic is incredible.
I think the operative phrase there is the work ethic is incredible. That's the operative phrase. If I look at Chinese manufacturers, there are 2 things that stick out for me. The one is the predilection to invest cash as if cash is free. I have never seen, not since the 20s in the United States, the kind of remorseless investment of cash as if the risk did not matter. I haven't seen that, since the 20s in the United States, since the real go-go years. And so that's one distinguishing feature of the Chinese manufacturer. The other distinguishing feature of the Chinese manufacturer is the willingness of the Chinese worker to put in 12 hours a day of unstinting, unending, labor. It's extraordinary. And one of the reasons I don't know the Chinese market well enough, but very, very industrious people, many of them removed from their homes for, 11 months of the year, living on their own. And the other thing is they're a very, very ambitious society, extremely well-educated, ambitious society, coming from, a third world origin, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, I remember growing up thinking just how bad life was in China. Mm-hmm. So these unique circumstances are not going to be replicated in Mexico or Hungary or anywhere else in the world, perhaps. And China is going to run out of capital. The freedom to invest without thought of risk, those years are about over, if not already over.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit on that because there's deflation happening, but because of that, Chinese government just announced massive stimulation. They're throwing money at this. Where are they going to throw the money at this? Probably robots and electric vehicles. They're going to continue that path is what I'm suggesting.
All of that stuff is great until the money runs out.
Okay. Yeah.
China is in terrible trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, I resurrected last week. I resurrected a 2014 presentation I made to our corporate meeting, first meeting we had after my company was acquired. My last company was acquired, and I resurrected it, and I predicted a disaster for China. And they staved off that disaster longer than I thought that. It took them longer to hit the wall. And the problem with disasters is the longer you stave them off, the worse they get. I don't think we're beginning to see the end of it. And with this is going to come social unrest. We'll see just how easy it is for them to throw money, quote unquote, at this problem. It's easy to throw money at the problem when money is printed. When the printers stop, life becomes more difficult.
Oh, okay. I think you might be right. We'll see what happens here. Okay, that was good. So what we did here was looked at what's happening with China electric vehicle market as they go global, entering the US. But there's a lot bigger story here. It's what's going to happen to China and what's going to happen to their industry and what's going to happen to the country. Thank you so much, Larry. Follow him on X at Tesla Larry. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.